An ex-casino waitress with 12 years serving drinks on the floor just revealed something that could change how you think about slot machines forever. These aren't the games casinos want you to avoid because they're rigged against you. These are the machines they're quietly removing from their floors right now because they can't afford to keep them running. We're talking about math errors that slipped through testing, maintenance nightmares costing more than the machines earn, and one game that was pulled from three major Las Vegas properties in just 90 days. What you're about to hear comes from someone who watched players win and lose millions, who served drinks to advantage players documenting their systems, and who saw management meetings about which machines were bleeding money. Machine number 7 involves actual motion sickness and mechanical failures. Machine number 10 led to players getting banned from multiple casinos across 3 states. If you've ever wondered why your favorite game suddenly disappeared from the casino floor, you're about to find out. Machine number 1, Lightning Link High Stakes, the penny slot that pays like a dollar machine. Here's what most players don't know about Lightning Link cabinets. The older models, the ones installed before 2023, have a math configuration that casinos discovered way too late. According to internal reports that former floor managers have discussed, these specific cabinets are running at an RTP between 92 and 94% on the penny denomination. That's significantly higher than what the casino intended when they put these machines on the floor. There was a player named Susan who figured this out before management did. She was a regular, came in 3 or 4 times a week, and at some point she realized that certain Lightning Link cabinets were paying differently than others. She started keeping notes, tracking which specific machines on the floor gave her the best results. Over 6 months, Susan documented wins totaling over $40,000. She wasn't doing anything illegal. She was just paying attention to which machines were the old models, the ones that hadn't been updated with the software patch Aristocrat released in 2023. That software update lowered the RTP to something closer to 88 or 89%, which is more in line with what casinos expect from a penny slot. But here's the problem for casinos. They can't just reprogram a machine and change the RTP without going through state gaming approval and a complete recertification process. It's not like updating an app on your phone. The easier solution, the one that doesn't involve paperwork and regulatory scrutiny, is to simply remove the machines from the floor entirely. Internal casino reports obtained by former employees show that these specific Lightning Link cabinets have a hold percentage that's 4 to 6% lower than comparable games in the same denomination. When you're running hundreds of machines and counting on specific profit margins from each one, that difference adds up to serious money. So what happened to Susan? Her favorite machine, the one she'd been playing consistently for months, was removed in October of 2025. She told me personally that she felt like she lost a friend. She'd come in looking for it, see the empty space on the floor, and you could just see the disappointment. She still plays Lightning Link, but on the newer cabinets, and according to her, it's not the same. The wins don't come as frequently, and when they do, they're smaller. She knows something changed, even if she doesn't know all the technical details about RTP percentages and software updates. But if you think that's the casino's biggest problem with slot machines right now, wait until you hear about machine number 2. This one involves an actual programming error that made it through manufacturing, and the players who discovered it documented profits that got the manufacturer's attention fast. Machine number 2, Buffalo Diamond Select Locations. The math error that slipped through quality control. We're talking specifically about Buffalo Diamond cabinets that were manufactured between March and August of 2024. According to documentation that former slot technicians have shared, there's a programming error in how these machines calculate bonus frequency. The free spins feature is triggering at roughly 1 in 95 spins, instead of the intended rate of 1 in every 140 spins. That might not sound like a huge difference, but when you run the math on thousands of spins, it completely changes the game's profitability profile. Internal data that's been reviewed shows these specific machines are averaging between 91 and 93% RTP instead of the target range of 87 to 88%. There was a high roller named Marcus who noticed this pattern before most people. He's the kind of player who tracks everything, keeps spreadsheets, documents his sessions down to the individual spin. Marcus figured out that certain Buffalo diamond cabinets were performing differently than others, and he started playing them exclusively. Over 4 months, he documented $85,000 in profit. The way you could identify which machines had the error came down to serial numbers. The affected cabinets have serial numbers beginning with BD2403 through BD2408. Marcus knew this, and according to people who saw him play, he'd walk the casino floor checking serial numbers before he'd sit down. In September of 2025, IGT issued a recall notice to casinos. It wasn't a loud public announcement. It was a quiet offer to replace the affected cabinets with corrected versions at no cost to the casino. But here's the thing about recalls in the casino industry. Processing them costs money in terms of labor and logistics. Smaller casinos, especially regional properties that aren't part of major corporations, haven't all processed these recalls yet. Some of them still have these machines on their floors right now. Casinos are banking on the fact that most players don't know which specific cabinets have the error, don't know what serial numbers to look for, and won't notice the slightly higher hit frequency. But players like Marcus, the ones who pay attention and document everything, they absolutely noticed. And once that information started getting shared in certain communities online, it became a problem the manufacturer couldn't ignore. This isn't about a machine being loose or a casino setting better odds to attract players. This is a literal mathematical error in the programming that casinos are scrambling to fix before more people figure it out. Marcus's story gets even more interesting when you hear about machine number 5, but first let me tell you about machine number 3, because this one involves actual legal pressure that's making casino executives extremely nervous. Machine number 3, Dragon Link Golden Century $5 denomination. The lawsuit machine. We're talking specifically about the $5 denomination version of Dragon Link Golden Century, and the reason casinos are removing these has nothing to do with RTP or mathematical edge. This is about 3 separate lawsuits filed in 2024 and 2025, claiming the machine engages in deceptive advertising practices. The machine prominently displays messaging that says, "Grand Jackpot frequently won," right there on the screen where players can see it. But according to internal documents that have been discussed by former employees, the Grand Jackpot on the $5 denomination triggers approximately once every 8,000 to 12,000 spins. At $5 per spin and an average play rate of about 600 spins per hour, you're looking at 13 to 20 hours of continuous play to statistically hit that frequency. The lawsuits claim that advertising a jackpot as frequently won when the actual trigger rate is that low constitutes misleading advertising. Before I tell you why this creates such a legal nightmare for casinos, I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe and let me know in the comments. Have you ever played a machine that seemed impossible to trigger the top jackpot? 2 of the 3 lawsuits have already settled out of court. The settlement amounts weren't disclosed publicly, but the fact that casinos chose to settle rather than fight suggests they knew the advertising claims were problematic. The 3rd lawsuit is still pending in Nevada District Court as of early 2026. According to former floor managers who've seen the internal communications, corporate headquarters sent out a directive in November of 2025 to phase out the $5 denomination version of Dragon Link Golden Century. The replacement strategy is telling. They're keeping the $1 denomination versions on the floor where the math is similar, but the actual dollar amounts being wagered are lower. Lower wagers mean lower lawsuit exposure, even if the odds of hitting the grand are essentially the same. There was a player named Jennifer who spent $12,000 over the course of several months chasing that grand jackpot. She was one of the people who filed a lawsuit. She documented every session, kept receipts, took photos of the advertising on the machine screen. She accepted a settlement, and the terms prevent her from discussing the specific amount. But she's talked publicly about the experience of feeling misled by the machine's advertising. I served drinks to Jennifer for 8 months while she was playing that machine. I watched her cycle through hope and frustration and eventually anger as she realized how rare that grand jackpot actually was. When the machine finally got removed from our property in December, she came in one more time and actually thanked the floor manager. She called it removing her demon. She said seeing that empty space on the casino floor was the first time she felt free from the compulsion to keep playing. This isn't about whether the machine's RTP is fair or whether the math favors the house. Every slot machine favors the house. This is about legal liability and regulatory scrutiny. When advertising claims can be challenged in court, when settlements start adding up, when state gaming commissions start asking questions about whether marketing materials accurately represent odds, suddenly a profitable machine becomes more trouble than it's worth. The irony is that Dragon Link Golden Century is actually profitable on a pure math basis. The house edge is solid, players enjoy the game, it generates revenue. But the legal costs, the settlement payments, the regulatory attention, all of that exceeds what the machine earns. Casino executives are making business decisions that have nothing to do with whether players are winning or losing. They're looking at which machines create liability, exposure that costs more than the machines generate. And speaking of machines that create problems beyond just the math, wait until you hear about machine number 4. This one isn't being removed because of lawsuits or player complaints. It's being removed because it literally costs more to keep running than it makes in profit. Machine number 4. Ultimate Firelink Cashman Fever. The Maintenance Nightmare. This is a bally machine with an elaborate multi-level progressive system and complex mechanical elements that make it one of the most visually impressive games on any casino floor. Players love it. The animations are spectacular, the wheel mechanism is engaging, the progressive displays are huge and eye-catching. But according to former slot technicians who've kept detailed records, this machine averages 2.3 service calls per week, compared to an industry average of zero point 0.4 service calls per week for standard slot machines. Every service call costs the casino between $85 and $150 in labor, parts, and machine downtime. The math on this is straightforward. The machine generates somewhere between $400 and $600 in profit per day when it's working correctly, but it's losing $200 to $300 per day in maintenance costs. A slot technician named Robert, who worked at an MGM property, kept personal logs of every service call he responded to over an 18-month period. Management had asked him to track time spent on different machine types because they were trying to understand labor allocation across the slot floor. What Robert discovered was that Cashman Fever machines represented 40% of his service calls, but only 8% of the total machines on the floor. The specific failure points are consistent across properties. The mechanical wheel mechanism that spins during bonus features jams frequently, especially in casinos where air quality isn't perfect and dust accumulation becomes an issue. The touchscreen has calibration problems that require a technician to come out and recalibrate the sensors. The progressive display connections fail regularly, requiring the entire top box to be removed and reconnected. And there's an ongoing issue with bill validators not recognizing newer currency designs, which means constant recalibration of the payment systems. Multiple properties decided not to renew floor space for these machines when their lease terms ended. In the slot machine industry, casinos often lease equipment from manufacturers rather than purchasing outright. When a lease ends, they evaluate whether to renew based on profitability. Cashman Fever machines are being replaced with simpler progressive systems that have fewer mechanical components and more reliable digital interfaces. Robert told me about the night they removed 6 of these machines from his property. It happened after closing, around 3 in the morning. They took them straight to storage in the back warehouse. The floor manager told him directly that the machines had been losing money on maintenance for 8 months straight. The broader trend in the industry is moving away from elaborate mechanical elements toward purely digital interfaces. Manufacturers learned an expensive lesson with machines like Cashman Fever. Players love the spectacle, the physical wheel spinning, the mechanical elements that make the game feel more tangible. But casinos can't justify the cost when maintenance expenses eat up all the profit and then some. It's honestly kind of heartbreaking from a player perspective. These machines are gorgeous, exciting, genuinely fun to play, but they're too expensive to keep running when something breaks down every few days. The industry is optimizing for reliability over spectacle, and players are the ones who lose that experience. But here's where it gets really interesting. Machine number 5 is the one Marcus from earlier actually made most of his money on, and what he discovered could legitimately get someone in serious trouble if they tried to replicate it now. Machine number 5, 88 Fortunes. Original cabinets pre-2021, the Advantage Play machine. Remember Marcus from machine number 2? The high roller who documented $85,000 in profit on Buffalo Diamond? That was impressive, but it wasn't his real discovery. What Marcus actually found, what he shared with a small community of Advantage players before casinos caught on, involves original 88 Fortunes cabinets that were installed before 2021. We're talking about machines with serial numbers starting with 88F18 through 88F20. According to documentation that Advantage players have shared in certain forums, these specific cabinets have an exploitable pattern in how the progressive bonus round selects which jackpot level you win. The game has 4 progressive levels: mini, minor, major, and grand. When you trigger the bonus round, you pick from gold coins on the screen, and whichever progressive symbols you reveal determine which jackpot you win. On these older cabinets, the selection isn't completely random. The pattern follows a predictable sequence based on the outcomes of the previous 20 bonus rounds. If you track which progressive levels have been won recently, you can develop a statistical edge in predicting which level is more likely to hit next. Marcus discovered this pattern himself through months of observation and documentation. He would sit at these machines for hours, tracking every bonus round even when he wasn't playing, writing down which progressive levels triggered and in what sequence. Once he confirmed the pattern was real and repeatable, he shared it with a community of Advantage players who specialize in finding these kinds of exploits. Multiple players confirmed what Marcus found. They tested it across different properties, different cabinets with the same serial number ranges, and the pattern held consistent. Using this method, Advantage players reported achieving a consistent 2 to 4% edge over the house. That doesn't sound like much, but in gambling, any positive edge transforms a losing proposition into a winning one. Over 6 months after discovering this exploit, Marcus made an additional $60,000 specifically on 88 Fortunes machines. That's on top of what he'd already won on Buffalo Diamond. He knew exactly which cabinets to play, exactly when the pattern suggested a major or grand was statistically due, and he played accordingly. Casino surveillance eventually noticed something unusual. Multiple players were observed comparing notes near 88 Fortunes machines, looking at their phones between bonus rounds, and specifically targeting certain cabinets while ignoring others. Security brought in gaming consultants who specialized in Advantage play detection. After reviewing surveillance footage and analyzing play patterns, they confirmed that players were exploiting a programming quirk in the bonus selection algorithm. The consultants reached out to Scientific Games, the manufacturer, who acknowledged that the pattern exists in cabinets manufactured during that specific time period. It was an unintended consequence of how the random number generator was seeded in those older models. Scientific Games offered replacement cabinets with corrected programming at a discounted rate. Between August and December of 2025, every major Las Vegas property removed these vulnerable 88 Fortunes cabinets from their floors. Here's the legally interesting part. What Marcus and other Advantage players did wasn't actually illegal. They didn't tamper with the machines, didn't use any devices, didn't access any insider information. They simply observed patterns and made betting decisions based on those observations. But casinos have the legal right to refuse service to anyone for any reason that isn't protected discrimination. Marcus was banned from 3 major Las Vegas properties. He kept all his winnings because he hadn't broken any laws, but he's no longer welcome at those casinos. I served Marcus drinks dozens of times over the years. He was always polite, always tipped well, always seemed like just another regular player. I had no idea he was making the kind of money he was making until much later. On his last day at our property, before security informed him he was being trespassed, he told me something I'll never forget. He said, "I knew it wouldn't last forever. Nothing good ever does in a casino. The broader issue here isn't just about one specific machine or one specific exploit. It's about casino paranoia regarding advantage play scenarios. Even a small mathematical edge, when discovered and shared among knowledgeable players, can cost casinos millions. They would rather remove a profitable machine entirely than risk advantage players spreading information through online communities and taking consistent wins. This represents a fundamental tension in modern gambling. Information spreads faster than ever before. Players can coordinate, share data, and confirm patterns across multiple properties in real time. Casinos are terrified of this reality, and their response is to eliminate any game where organized intelligent play can overcome the house edge. Now, you might think that's the worst case scenario for a casino, players finding and exploiting mathematical vulnerabilities in the programming. But machine number 6 involves something casinos find even more frustrating. This one isn't about math or mechanics. It's about licensing agreements that made financial sense 10 years ago, but have become unsustainable in 2026. Machine number 6, Game of Thrones, penny denomination license theme, the licensing nightmare. We're talking specifically about Aristocrat's Game of Thrones slot machines, particularly the penny denomination versions that have been on casino floors since the license was first secured around 2015. The problem has nothing to do with RTP, nothing to do with mechanical failures, nothing to do with player complaints. This is purely about the economics of licensed intellectual property. According to industry insiders familiar with licensing agreements, slot machines based on major entertainment properties pay between 8 and 12% of total revenue to the license holder. Compare that to proprietary themes that casinos develop themselves or license from manufacturers at 2 to 4%. The Game of Thrones license is particularly expensive because of the franchise's value and HBO's negotiating position. When you run the profitability analysis on a Game of Thrones machine, it generates solid revenue. Players recognize the brand. They're drawn to the familiar characters and music. They enjoy the themed bonus features. But after paying license fees, after accounting for floor space costs and routine maintenance, the profit margin is razor thin. Put a proprietary theme machine in that same floor space, and the casino generates 30 to 40% higher profit despite similar revenue numbers. Many of the original licensing agreements for Game of Thrones machines are expiring in 2025 and 2026. Casinos are making the business decision not to renew. They're replacing these machines with proprietary themes that deliver better margins without the ongoing license payments. There was a player named Diana who exclusively played Game of Thrones machines. She was a devoted fan of the show, had watched the entire series multiple times, and playing the slot machine felt like an extension of that fandom. She came in 3 times a week, always headed straight for her favorite Game of Thrones cabinet, always played the same seat. In January of 2026, a floor manager told Diana that the machines would be removed by March. Diana felt personally betrayed by the casino. She'd been playing those machines for 4 years. She had lucky seats, favorite bonus features, a whole emotional relationship with that game. She hasn't been back to the casino since they were removed. I watched Diana cry when they took her favorite machine off the floor. It might sound dramatic, but for players who develop deep connections with specific games, especially ones tied to entertainment properties they love, removal feels personal. The industry trend is clear. Casinos are shifting away from expensive license themes toward proprietary intellectual property. They're developing lookalike themes that evoke similar feelings without requiring premium license fees. You'll see games with dragons and medieval settings that feel like Game of Thrones without actually being Game of Thrones, avoiding the 12% revenue share. The financial reality is straightforward. Licensing deals that made sense in 2015 when these machines were new and exciting don't make sense in 2026 when they're just expensive nostalgia. High-limit rooms are the exception. Some properties are keeping Game of Thrones machines in high-limit areas where the per-spin revenue is high enough to justify the license costs. But on the main floor where people are playing pennies and quarters, the math doesn't work anymore. Roughly 60% of Game of Thrones machines have been removed from major properties by the end of 2025. The remaining 40% will likely follow as leases expire and licensing agreements come up for renewal. It's an entirely business driven decision that has nothing to do with whether players enjoy the game or whether it's profitable in absolute terms. When your competitor is generating 40% better margins with a similar game that doesn't require license payments, you can't justify keeping the expensive option on your floor. But if you think licensing costs are bad, wait until you hear about machine number 7. This one was pulled from 3 major Las Vegas properties in just 90 days, and the reason involves both technical disasters and player complaints that management couldn't ignore. Machine number 7, Wheel of Fortune 4. D latest version? The overcomplicated disaster. We're talking about IGT's newest Wheel of Fortune cabinet featuring 4D display technology, moving seats that shift during gameplay, and wind effects that blow air at players during bonus rounds. When these machines were first installed, casinos treated it like a major event. There were champagne receptions, photographers documenting the installation, press releases about next-generation immersive gambling experiences. 18 months later, most of these machines are sitting in storage warehouses collecting dust. The technical problems started almost immediately. The 4D display, which creates a sense of depth and motion through specialized screen technology, causes motion sickness in an estimated 15 to 20% of players. That's not a minor issue. When 1 in 5 people who try your machine feels nauseous afterward, word spreads fast. The moving seats have a mechanical failures averaging once every 10 days. Each failure requires a technician to come out, diagnose the problem, order parts, and complete repairs while the machine sits unplayable on the floor. The wind effect system, which seemed innovative in the design phase, clogs with dust and requires weekly cleaning to function properly. And the entire system crashes, requiring a full reboot once every 3 to 4 days. These aren't minor glitches. These are fundamental reliability problems that make the machines unusable for extended periods. The cost analysis is damning. A standard Wheel of Fortune cabinet costs casinos between $15,000 and $20,000. The 4D version costs between $45,000 and $55,000. That's 200% more expensive for a machine that only generates 20 to 30% more revenue than the standard version, and that's when it's actually working. According to floor observations documented by multiple properties, many players actively avoid the 4D version even when it's functioning correctly. They prefer the classic cabinets they're familiar with, the reliable gameplay they've enjoyed for years. There was a player named Catherine, 62 years old, who'd been playing Wheel of Fortune for 2 decades. She tried the 4D version once when it was first installed, got motion sickness from the display effects, and refused to ever play it again. She told management directly, "I've been playing Wheel of Fortune for 20 years. I don't need it to blow wind in my face, I just want to spin the wheel." The removal timeline tells the whole story. Bellagio removed their 4 units in October of 2025. Caesars Palace removed 6 units in November of 2025. MGM Grand removed 8 units in December of 2025. The public statements from casino management cited routine equipment rotation and floor optimization. But internal documents that former employees have discussed reveal the real reason the machines weren't profitable when you factored in maintenance costs, downtime, and player avoidance. Properties are replacing them with classic Wheel of Fortune cabinets or newer simple design progressives that players actually want to play. Gaming industry analysts who've commented on this situation suggest the 4D experiment represents innovation for innovation's sake. The technology was implemented not because players asked for it or because it improved gameplay, but because manufacturers wanted to demonstrate technical capability. The result is a product that looks impressive in trade show demonstrations, but fails in real-world casino environments. IGT quietly discontinued the 4D line in January of 2026. There was no press release, no official announcement. The product simply disappeared from their catalog. Casinos that purchase these machines outright rather than leasing them are stuck with depreciated assets worth a fraction of what they paid. I watched them install these machines at our property with such fanfare. There was a whole presentation about the future of slot gaming, about immersive experiences, about technology advancing the industry. 18 months later, I watched those same machines get wheeled into storage. The floor manager didn't say much, but you could tell he was embarrassed about the whole situation. Dedicated Wheel of Fortune players actually celebrated when the classic versions came back. They'd missed the simplicity, the reliability, the familiar experience. The lesson here is that players don't always want what manufacturers think they want. Sometimes innovation means listening to what players actually enjoy, rather than imposing technological solutions to problems that don't exist. And speaking of machines where casinos misread what players want, machine number 8 represents an even more fundamental miscalculation. This one was specifically designed for high rollers, the biggest spenders in any casino. But the math was so punishing that even whales refused to play it. Machine number 8, Scarab High Limit version. The Whale Repellent. We're talking specifically about IGT's Scarab slot machine in the $25 to $100 denomination range installed in high-limit rooms. These machines were designed explicitly to attract high rollers, the players casinos call whales, who regularly bet thousands of dollars per session. The strategy seemed sound in theory. Create an extremely volatile game with massive win potential to appeal to players who can afford big swings. But casinos made a critical miscalculation about how sophisticated high-limit players actually are. The high-limit version of Scarab has an estimated RTP between 85 and 87%. Compare that to penny versions of the same game that run between 89 and 91%. The logic behind this configuration was that high rollers wouldn't notice or care about RTP differences, that they were playing for entertainment and the thrill of huge potential wins, rather than grinding out optimal return percentages. That assumption was completely wrong. High rollers are often the most sophisticated gamblers in any casino. They understand RTP, they understand volatility, they absolutely notice when the math is significantly worse than comparable games. According to reports from casino hosts who work directly with these players, multiple high rollers specifically requested that Scarab machines be removed from high-limit rooms. The math that doesn't work is straightforward. At $100 per spin with 85% RTP, your expected loss is $15 per spin. Playing at a comfortable pace of maybe 60 spins per hour, you're looking at $900 per hour in theoretical losses. Compare that to other high-limit games offering 92 to 94% RTP. At those percentages, your expected loss at $100 per spin drops to $6 to $8 per spin, $360 to $480 per hour. The difference is substantial enough that knowledgeable players avoid Scarab entirely. There was a player named Michael, a genuine whale with an estimated net worth over $50 million. He's a regular high-limit player at multiple Las Vegas properties, known by hosts at every major casino. During the opening week when Scarab high-limit versions were first installed, Michael played for about 3 hours and lost $40,000. After that session, he went home and analyzed the math. He looked at his win frequency, his average return per bonus round, the overall performance compared to other games he plays regularly. Once he confirmed that the RTP was significantly lower than alternatives, he never played Scarab again. More importantly, Michael spoke directly to his casino host about it. He didn't complain loudly or make a scene. He simply stated that if those machines remained in the high-limit room, he'd play at a competitor property instead. Michael's annual theoretical loss across all his casino play is worth $2 to $3 million to whichever property gets his business. That's far more valuable than any single slot machine could ever generate. Within 30 days of Michael's conversation with his host, the area removed all Scarab machines from their high-limit room. Multiple other properties followed the same pattern after receiving similar feedback from high-value players. The irony is that these machines were specifically designed to attract exactly the players who ended up rejecting them. By the end of 2025, high-limit Scarab versions had been removed from approximately 80% of Las Vegas high-limit rooms. The few remaining installations are in properties that either haven't gotten feedback from their whales yet or are still evaluating performance data. The lesson casinos learned is that you can't fool sophisticated players with bad math no matter how flashy the game presentation is. Michael was extremely polite about the whole situation, but his message was clear: respect my intelligence or lose my business. Management removed those machines the same week. Even casinos have customers they can't afford to lose, and sometimes keeping one whale happy means removing a machine that whale refuses to play. We're down to the final two machines, and these last two represent what I think is the future casino executives are most afraid of. It's not about math errors or mechanical problems anymore. It's about players organizing, sharing information, and cooperating in ways that threaten the fundamental business model. Machine number 9: Dancing Drums Explosion Community Progressive Version. The social media problem. We're talking specifically about Scientific Games' Dancing Drums Explosion in the linked community progressive configuration, where 4 seats are positioned around a central display and all players share the same progressive jackpots. The setup was designed to create a social element on the casino floor. Players would cheer for each other when someone triggered a bonus, celebrate together when progressives hit, build a sense of community around the game. What casinos didn't anticipate was how that social element would extend beyond the physical casino floor into digital spaces where players could coordinate their activity in ways that disrupted the entire business model. It started with Facebook groups. Around mid 2024, players who enjoyed dancing drums began creating online communities to share their experiences, post pictures of their wins, and discuss strategy. One group called Dancing Drums. Hunters grew to over 4,500 members by the middle of 2025. What began as casual conversation evolved into something far more organized. Members started sharing real-time information about progressive levels across multiple properties. They'd post updates about which casinos had the highest jackpot values, which locations seemed due for a major hit based on how long it had been since the last payout, and optimal times to play based on crowd patterns and progressive accumulation rates. Then they started coordinating visits. Players would communicate through group chats and Discord servers, organizing group trips to specific properties when progressive levels reached certain thresholds. There's a documented case from September 2025 where 8 members of the same Facebook group descended on Harrah's Las Vegas within a 2-hour window after someone posted that the major progressive had climbed above $8,000. The problem for casinos isn't that this constitutes advantage play in any illegal sense. Players aren't tampering with machines, aren't accessing restricted information, aren't doing anything that violates gaming regulations. But the coordination concentrates player volume in unpredictable ways that disrupts floor management and progressive liability calculations. When progressives climb to high levels, suddenly dozens of coordinated players flood into the casino at once, and the property experiences rapid clusters of progressive payouts that weren't anticipated in their financial modeling. There was a group that called themselves the Tuesday Night Crew. 7 players who met through the Dancing Drums Hunters Facebook group and started coordinating weekly casino sessions together. They would monitor progressive levels across 12 different properties throughout the week, calculate theoretical dew points based on seed values and average accumulation rates, and coordinate their visits for Tuesday nights when they'd all determine the math was most favorable. Over 8 months, the Tuesday Night Crew documented combined progressive wins totaling over $120,000. They had a specific method. They'd track which progressives across multiple properties were approaching historically high levels, compare that data against how long it had been since each progressive last hit, and make group decisions about where to play on any given Tuesday. When they showed up, they'd take over all 4 seats at a community progressive machine, order drinks, tip well, and play for hours. They shared their wins and losses among the group, creating social pressure to continue playing together, even during losing sessions. I served the Tuesday Night Crew drinks almost every week for 6 months. They were some of my favorite customers. They laughed together, celebrated each other's wins, seemed to genuinely enjoy each other's company. Management loved them at first. A group of 7 people, showing up reliably every week, playing for hours, ordering drinks and food, tipping the staff. It seemed like exactly the kind of customer loyalty casinos dream about. Then management started reviewing the numbers, and realized how much this group was actually winning. They noticed patterns in surveillance footage. The same 7 people, always on Tuesdays, always targeting Dancing Drums community progressives, always checking their phones between bonus rounds, clearly coordinating their play based on information they were sharing digitally. Security brought in consultants who specialize in advantage play detection. After reviewing weeks of surveillance and analyzing the group's play patterns and win rates, they confirmed what management suspected. These players were using social media coordination to target machines at optimal times based on progressive levels and statistical analysis. Multiple casinos responded in different ways. Some properties banned known group members, which immediately triggered discrimination complaints and bad publicity. Some restructured their progressive levels to make accumulation less predictable, which annoyed regular players who weren't part of any coordination effort. Most casinos chose the simplest solution. Between October 2025 and January 2026, over 60% of community Dancing Drums machines were removed from major properties and replaced with solo play versions where each player has individual progressives that can't be monitored or coordinated across groups. The Tuesday night crew dissolved after their favorite machines disappeared. Members drifted to other casinos, other games, other groups. Some of them still played Dancing Drums on the solo versions, but it's not the same without the community element and the coordination that made their system work. Casino attorneys expressed concerns that banning coordinated players could trigger discrimination claims or even organized labor issues if groups could argue they were being targeted for collective activity. The much easier legal solution was to simply remove the machines that enabled coordination in the first place. Other slot manufacturers are taking note. Future community progressive designs are being engineered specifically to prevent the kind of coordination that Dancing Drums enabled, with randomized progressive structures that can't be predicted based on historical data. I watched management remove those machines from our floor. The Tuesday night crew had been some of my favorite customers to serve. They tipped well, treated staff with respect, brought energy and excitement to the casino floor. But I understood why the machines had to go. Once you create a game that rewards group coordination and information sharing, you've created something casinos fundamentally cannot control. Social media changed gambling in ways manufacturers and casino executives never anticipated when they designed these community progressive systems. But those social media groups discovered something even more significant than coordinated progressive hunting. Machine number 10 is what they found, and it represents everything casinos fear about the modern gambling landscape, where information spreads instantly and players can organize on a scale that threatens the entire business model. What the Tuesday night crew and groups like them discovered led directly to machine number 10. And when you hear what they found, you'll understand why casinos are removing these machines as fast as they legally can. This involves the biggest documented win I personally witnessed in 12 years serving drinks on casino floors. 3 players I knew personally are now banned from Nevada casinos entirely because of this machine. The manufacturer stopped producing this specific version in December of 2025. State gaming commissions in 3 states opened investigations related to this particular machine configuration. That Facebook group I mentioned earlier, Dancing Drums Hunters, their biggest discovery wasn't actually about Dancing Drums at all. It was about machine number 10. We're talking about documented player wins totaling over $800,000 across multiple properties in less than 1 year. This machine represents why casinos are becoming more restrictive, more careful, more focused on removing anything that gives players even a slight edge through coordination and information sharing. Everything I've told you about the previous 9 machines has been leading to this. So let me tell you about machine number 10, the one casino executives discuss in closed-door meetings, the one that represents their worst nightmare about where the industry is heading. Machine number 10, Fu Dai Lian Lian Dragon-Linked Progressive Specific Configuration, the perfect storm. We're talking about IGT's Fu Dai Lian Lian Dragon in the wide area progressive configuration that links between 40 and 60 machines across 4 to 8 different casino properties simultaneously. This wasn't just a single casino's progressive system. This was a network connecting multiple properties where every dollar wagered on any linked machine fed into shared progressive pools that could be won by players at any location in the network. The configuration featured four progressive levels: mini, minor, major, and grand. The grand jackpot was designed to trigger approximately once every 2 to 3 months across the entire network of linked machines. The progressive levels were visible on every connected machine whether you were playing or not, which meant anyone could walk through any participating casino and monitor the current jackpot values without spending a single dollar. The Tuesday Night Crew and similar groups across multiple states discovered that this system had exploitable patterns on several levels simultaneously. First, progressive levels were completely transparent across all linked locations. Players could monitor values without playing, tracking accumulation rates and historical patterns from the comfort of their homes. Second, the grand progressive reseated at known fixed values immediately after someone won it. Players could calculate theoretical dew points based on how long it had been since the last grand hit and how much the progressive had accumulated. Third, when progressive values climbed to historically high levels, coordinated players could concentrate their play to force faster progression toward trigger points. Fourth, the multi-property linking meant a single organized group could impact the entire network by strategically distributing their play across different locations. The Tuesday Night Crew's biggest coordinated effort happened over a 6-week period in late 2025. They tracked the grand progressive as it climbed from its seed value of $40,000 up past $180,000. They documented historical data showing the grand had never exceeded $190,000 without hitting. They organized a 12-person coordinated assault across 3 different properties, taking shifts, documenting every single spin, sharing real-time data through encrypted messaging apps. After combined play totaling 47 hours and approximately $62,000 in total wagers across all 12 participants, a group member named David hit the grand progressive for $184,573. Here's what made this different from a normal jackpot win. The group had agreed in advance to split any major progressive wins, proportionally based on how much each member had wagered during the coordinated effort. They'd created a detailed spreadsheet tracking every dollar each person put into the machines during their 6-week campaign. When David hit the grand, the group treated it as a collective win and distributed shares according to their predetermined agreement. This level of coordination and profit sharing on slot machines was unprecedented. It was essentially organized team play, the kind of sophisticated tracking and bankroll management normally associated with card counting operations, applied to a slot machine network. Casino surveillance across multiple properties noticed unusual patterns. The same group of players appearing at different locations, always targeting Fu Dai Lian Dragon machines, constantly checking phones between spins, clearly coordinating based on real-time information sharing. 3 separate state gaming commissions launched investigations into whether this constituted device manipulation or organized cheating under state gaming statutes. The legal conclusion after months of investigation was clear. Nothing the players did was illegal. They didn't tamper with machines, didn't access insider information, didn't hack into any systems. They simply observed publicly visible information and coordinated their play based on statistical analysis. But casino response was swift, regardless of legality. David and 6 other core members of the coordination effort were issued trespass notices from multiple properties. They kept their winnings because they hadn't violated any laws, but they're permanently banned from playing at those casinos. IGT issued a network discontinuation notice in November of 2025. By January of 2026, every machine in the Fu Dai Lian Dragon-wide area progressive network had been removed and replaced with standalone versions featuring property-specific progressives that couldn't be coordinated across multiple locations. I served David drinks the night he hit that jackpot. The entire group was there. They went absolutely crazy, hugging and celebrating like they'd won a lottery. Security watched everything closely but couldn't intervene because, technically, no rules had been broken. David tipped me $500 that night. 2 weeks later, he was banned. Last I heard, he's playing at tribal casinos in Oklahoma now, where Nevada gaming regulations don't apply. A spokesperson for IGT was quoted in an industry publication saying the company was moving toward progressive systems that reward individual play rather than coordinated group activity. The industry impact extends far beyond this single machine. Other manufacturers are canceling or completely redesigning wide area linked progressive networks to prevent the coordination vulnerabilities that Fu Dai Leon Dragon exposed. That single jackpot win cost the casino network $184,000. But the investigation, legal reviews, consultation fees, and complete removal process cost an estimated $2 to $3 million across all involved properties. An internal memo from a major casino corporation that was leaked to industry insiders recommended immediate discontinuation of all wide area progressive networks, vulnerable to coordinated player tracking and information sharing. This is what 12 years serving drinks on casino floors taught me. Casinos will tolerate almost anything except players cooperating and sharing information effectively. Individual luck they can handle, that's built into their mathematical models. Organized intelligence gathering and coordinated play terrifies them because it undermines the fundamental assumption that every player is acting independently. Machine number 10 represents the convergence of everything casino executives fear most. Technology enabling real-time coordination, social media facilitating instant information sharing across geographic distances, sophisticated players discovering mathematical patterns and edges, legal gray areas where player behavior isn't prosecutable but still threatens profitability, game designs that accidentally reward cooperation over individual play. All of these factors came together in one machine network, and the result was so threatening to the casino business model that the entire system was dismantled within months. So there you have it. 10 slot machines. Casinos literally cannot afford to keep on their floors in 2026. What all these machines share is they represent something casinos can't control, whether that's exploitable math, mechanical unreliability, legal liability, unsustainable licensing costs, player coordination opportunities, regulatory scrutiny, or technology that backfired. I spent 12 years watching people win and lose millions on these machines. These 10 taught me that casinos aren't fundamentally afraid of people winning. They're afraid of losing control over the variables that determine who wins and when and how much. The industry is moving towards simpler and more reliable machines, proprietary themes, without expensive licensing agreements, game designs that prevent coordination, mathematical models that are completely bulletproof, and technology that enhances casino control rather than undermining it. If you found this information valuable, please subscribe. There's much more insider knowledge I can share about what really happens on casino floors. Let me know in the comments, have you played any of these 10 machines? And did you notice them disappearing from your local casino? And if you want to know what machines casinos are replacing these with, and why the new generation might be even more profitable for them, let me know and I'll make that video next. Thanks for watching. Remember, the house always adjusts.